So this is our reading this morning from Zechariah 9, verses 9 through 12. Rejoice greatly, daughter Zion. Shout, daughter Jerusalem. See, your king comes to you, righteous and victorious, lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. I will take away the chariots from Ephraim and the war horses from Jerusalem, and the battle bow will be broken. He will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. As for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. The word of the Lord. Amen. Picture this. A Roman governor parades into the city of Jerusalem. He's entering from the west, and it's a visual panoply of imperial power. 1,000+ soldiers, some on cavalry, some on foot, but all leather, armor, helmets, weapons, banners, golden eagles mounted on poles, just sun glinting off of everything. This imperial procession wasn't anything new or novel. This was a yearly occurrence that he would march in like this. The occasion that brought him back year after year is the Jewish Passover. It's a festival that swelled the population of Jerusalem to 4 times its normal capacity. And so the governor arrives in imperial majesty with all the intimidation that is meant to carry, to remind the Jewish pilgrims that Rome is really in charge. The crowds that greet him as he enters the city, the crowds that greet him shout, Ave Caesar, Gloria Rome, which means Hail Caesar, glory to Rome. This was the proclamation of the what we now call the Pax Romana, Roman peace, which is, of course, not much of a real peace. It was peace that was enforced by the iron fist of Rome. It was a peace held by brutality and by coercion. And so this governor, leading this procession up on his mighty war horse, is an unmistakable image that demanded loyalty from everyone. Now, that same week, perhaps some scholars suggest on the very same day, there's another parade going on the east side of the city. And this is not another imperial procession. It's a peasant procession. A young Galilean rabbi, accompanied by an entourage of day laborers and women, riding on this thoroughly unintimidating donkey, is riding in. No flashy weapons, no cavalry, no brightly colored banners. The people that have gathered to welcome him into the city, which it can hardly even be called a crowd compared to those that greeted the governor. These numbers are dwarfed in size in comparison to his parade. But those who ride in with him and those who welcomed him don't have banners to wave, but they're waving palm branches that they just cut off the side of the road. And they're shouting something also, but they are shouting, "Blessed is the King who comes in the name of the Lord. Peace in heaven and glory in the highest heaven." Of course, you may know, but I will tell you in case you don't, the imperial parade is welcoming in Roman governor Pontius Pilate. The peasant parade is welcoming in Jesus of Nazareth. 2 dramatically different visions of power, 2 dramatically different kingdoms that are now meeting in one significant political conflict. You might like to know, if you're curious at all, that at Burns Church we follow the lectionary for our readings, specifically the Revised Common Lectionary, which is shared by multiple different denominations all around the world. And this is where we get our readings for each week. If you get the Flame, our newsletter that comes out every month, we've begun putting the daily readings in those as well. And the idea is that over the course of 3 years, we'll have essentially read the whole Bible together. But what happens then is that we're just kind of given the scriptures for the morning. I don't have to make anything up. I love that. But what I love even more is that as I prepare for Sundays, as I prepare the prayers and the songs and, of course, the sermon, I prayerfully hold the assigned readings in one hand and just our current context in the other. What's going on in the scriptures? What's going on in our lives, or what's going on in our church, or what's going on in the world? And a couple of months ago, I recognized that today would be the day after our country's 250th anniversary. That still kind of blows my mind. That's tremendous. In terms of world history, that's no small feat. But as I recognized that that's what this Sunday would be, I found that I could not take my eyes off of Zechariah. Couldn't take my eyes off of this prophetic text. A text that both Matthew and John remembered. As they wrote their gospels down, as they told their stories, they remembered this prophecy as well. As they wrote their eyewitness accounts of Jesus riding into the city of David on a humble donkey, lowly fanfare, they recognized the reality that they had witnessed, that this was Zechariah's king. This is the one he was talking about. And I just think for us, living in a time and place where politics is nearly just as fraught as it was in first century Palestine, those were tumultuous times. It was a tricky culture to be living in, politically speaking, that perhaps we, being much in the same boat, ought to listen to Zechariah with fresh ears. To maybe look at our nation with fresh eyes. And to commit to Jesus with fresh loyalty. Because Jesus, as we'll see, Jesus is a different kind of king, and loyalty to his ways is a different kind of citizenship. It's a different way of being in the world. So here's the picture. Roughly 500 years earlier, 500 years before Pilate and Jesus would enter Jerusalem from these opposite directions, the prophet Zechariah begins his prophetic writing saying this: "In the 8th month, on the 2nd year of Darius, the word of the Lord came to the prophet Zechariah, son of Berechiah, the son of Iddo." Which sometimes we can read things like that in the Bible, and I'm like, that doesn't help me. I didn't know Iddo, and I didn't know Berechiah, and that doesn't help me know Zechariah, And let alone, I don't know who Darius was. But that date is important. 2nd year of Darius reigning. At this point, what this says is that it had only been about 18 years since the Jews had returned from their 70-year exile in Babylon. You know this story? So most of these Jews at this time that were still alive, most of them had been born in Babylon. They had been born in foreign soil under oppressive foreign rulership. And then, through a series of events, they made their pilgrimage back to the homeland. And were now still, 18 years in, they were still kind of in the early stages of rebuilding. They were like literally rebuilding their homes, their family lands, their society, but also just figuratively rebuilding who are we as a people. They were still a small people, weary, laboring to rebuild, still under foreign rule, albeit with a little bit more freedoms than they had had. At this time, the temple reconstruction had begun, which was a huge deal. The temple reconstruction had begun, was nowhere near completion, but they also still had no king. So imagine then, like this kind of maybe a back and forth conversation between the prophet Zechariah, having written what we just read a few moments ago, and these people. Zechariah is telling them, see, your king comes to you. I can imagine them replying, oh man, this is fantastic news. Yes, Zechariah, we could really use some solid leadership right now, especially if they'll deal with these like oppressive landlords we've got over us. You know, the Babylonian Empire conquered us and sent us into exile. Then the Achaemenid Empire conquered them. Then Darius came to power by cunning and violence and by killing off other people. Like, we're just so tired of it all. So this is great. What can we expect when our king shows up? Zechariah says, righteous and victorious. Yes, awesome sauce. Righteous and victorious is just how we like our kings. We want them to show up like this. Time to kick some Achaemenid butt, right? But then, Zechariah throws them this curveball. It says that this king will come lowly and riding on a donkey, on a colt, the foal of a donkey. Hold on a minute. Wait, Zechariah, hang on a second. This is not what we had in mind. Like, lowly? On a donkey? Like, everybody has one of those. Like, we prefer our kings bold and on a war horse. Can we choose door number 2, please? You know. Of course, the answer is nope, you can't choose door number 2. As unexpected as this may be, this is the king who is coming. It was a surprising prophecy to hear in like 520 BC. It was a surprising prophecy to see fulfilled in 33 AD. And if we're honest, it's still surprising in 2026. It still rubs against the grain of our expectations of power. But Zechariah's prophecy, it doesn't end with this humble king's arrival. He goes on to describe what life under this king's rule is going to look like. And this is what he tells these people. I will take away, he's kind of in the voice now of the king, right? I will take away the chariots from Ephraim, that's them, and the war horses from Jerusalem, that's them, and the battle bow will be broken. Okay, Zechariah. Like, we understand kicking off this regime change with the whole humble donkey bit. Like, that's cool, you know? Keep people on their toes. But now, disarmament? You're talking about disarmament? Like, we've become very attached with our weapons. We've grown up with them our whole lives. Like, our parents and their parents and their parents taught us all how to fight when we were young. We've got laws written saying we can have them. We've spent a lot of money on them. You're talking about disarmament? And it's like, yep, that's right. Your coming king doesn't need weapons of war to come to power, and your king doesn't need weapons of war to stay in power. His aim, in fact, is to prevent all future battle, all future wars. He's already said the same thing through another prophet. Let me remind you guys, Isaiah 2, verse 4. He will judge between the nations and will settle disputes for many peoples. They will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not take up sword against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. Isaiah is saying this, or Zechariah rather, is telling them the same thing. The king, he's going to get his carpenters to dismantle all of your chariots and like repurpose them for dining room furniture. All your war horses, they're now going to be put to use for other things. They're going to be put to use for farming and like pony rides at kids' birthday parties. And all your bows, they're going to be broken into kindling for backyard fires. Like, s'mores, anybody? But wait, there's more in this whole sales pitch that Zechariah is making here. His campaign, he says, his campaign of peace isn't going to stop with you as his people. He goes on in verse 10, says, he will proclaim peace to the nations. His rule will extend from sea to sea and from the river to the ends of the earth. These are ancient Near East prophetic ways of just talking about everywhere. Like, wait, okay, Zechariah, you're talking about like world peace now? Like not just peace in our safe city, but world peace? That's right. You know, all those nations that you've been scared of, those nations who conquered you, those people who put you into exile, those folks who you want to defend against and perhaps are even inclined to attack yourselves, all those nations that have caused you to build up your military industrial complex, yeah, even them, peace. Peace from sea to shining sea. And not just your sea to shining sea, but every nation's sea to shining sea. No landmass left behind. No nation or people group or language or culture left behind. This king aims to be, as we now so often proclaim him to be, but let us understand what we're saying. This king aims to be the King of Kings. Meaning, man, there's no rivals anymore. No rivals anymore. Thank you very much. Jesus is coming. Jesus is a different kind of king. And that means that loyalty to his ways of doing things, all of these shocking ways, it's a different kind of citizenship that we're invited into. And we are invited to live in this reality here and now. Jesus came to inaugurate this. We're no longer waiting for some great by and by. He's saying, live as if this was true now, today, in 2026. Living in the United States of America, or in Canada, or in the Ukraine, or in the USSR, in Russia, wherever you are in the world. The King has come, lowly and riding on a donkey. And I would suggest this, is that only as we live first as citizens of the kingdom of Jesus can we be good citizens of our earthly nations where God has chosen to place us. And I thank God all the time that he has placed me in the United States. I've traveled enough to know that this is where I want to be. Only as we live first as citizens of the kingdom of Jesus can we actually be good Americans. This is the vision of the king. And so what are the implications for us if we have this view of God as king of the universe, as Jesus, the King of Kings? It means that all other loyalties must fall in line behind our loyalty to him or beneath our loyalty to him. And wherever there's conflict, we must bow to him and offend others. All other ways of living, all other ways of doing business in this world must be checked by his ways of living. And where there's conflict, we must choose his ways and stop behaving like others. And there's so many loyalties that compete with this, and I don't even intend to try to go into all that. Our families compete for our loyalty. If you remember, we just read that passage from Jesus, right, where he's talking about, fathers against sons and mothers against mothers-in-law and all of this on account of him. This is what he's getting at, because even our earthly families rival for our loyalty. Our careers rival for our loyalty. For those of you guys who are retired, your retirement is still rivaling for your loyalty to Jesus. Our nation is a rival for loyalty. Our political parties, wherever we happen to align, are rivals for Jesus. Our own selves and our own self-interest and watching out for me and mine and taking care of what is important to me is a constant rival to Jesus. But here's the good news. Here's the invitation. Here's why we would want this, right? is because only as citizens of his kingdom do we have real hope. All these other rivals, they promise hope to us. But it's really hope that's just a self-serving sales pitch. All other ways of living or behaving may feel like hope in a moment, but it's an emotionally fleeting hope. This king and this hope are different. I want to read these last two verses from Zechariah in reverse order. This is what Zechariah tells them in verse 12. Return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Even now, I announce that I will restore twice as much to you. Again, remember this restoration bit has to do with them in exile, where they lost everything. He's promising restoration. But he says, return to your fortress, you prisoners of hope. Okay, wait a minute, Zechariah. All right, we're back here with you. Wait a minute. I thought that you said that this king was going to liberate us. But now you're telling us we're just going to be his prisoners? Well, yeah. A little ironic to put it this way, isn't it? Prisoners of hope. It's an odd phrase. But that's just how powerful this king is. You are no longer going to be prisoners of a waterless pit, which is in the verse before. That's the kind of prisoners you used to be, on the verge of death. You're no longer prisoners of a waterless pit, but now you are prisoners of hope. You've been liberated into a freedom that no other earthly ruler could ever lead you into, and that there's no hope of you ever escaping from. You cannot get away. You can't get out. No other rival is going to come in and defeat this new king and send you into exile ever again. You are prisoners of hope. He's never letting go. And here's how he accomplishes all of this. Zechariah gives us a little bit more of a peek into how does all of this lowliness and donkeys and peace from sea to shining sea and all how is this going to work? This is what he tells them in verse 11. He says, as for you, because of the blood of my covenant with you, I will free your prisoners from the waterless pit. The answer to how, the because, is right here. Because of the blood of my covenant with you. This unique relationship I'm setting up with you. I can hear the people okay, wait, Zechariah, we're trying here. You said this king was going to get rid of all means of war and violence, and he was going to break our bows, and we were going to roast s'mores. I'm tracking. But now you're using these words, the blood of my covenant with you. Wait. Whose blood is this? Who's getting bloody now? To which the king replies, I am. Whose blood is this? Mine. The king is saying, there will be no more bloodshed because I will shed my blood. This hope, this peace, this new sea to shining sea kingdom comes about not by shedding more blood in order to subdue these rival nations, but it comes by letting those rival kingdoms do their very worst to me. On the cross, Jesus allowed the violent powers of this world to do their worst to him so that he could undo them from the inside out. Because then, of course, we are now filling in the rest of the story that even Zechariah could not see. That he will conquer sin and death, that he will return victoriously humble to rule over the entire world in peace, because he's even defeated sin and death. And now, from this point in Zechariah, we're thrust back into the future again, 500 years after Zechariah's prophecy. Jesus, the Messianic king, the one who had just ridden into Jerusalem on this donkey, victoriously humble. He was now sharing this Passover meal with his disciples, which they had done numerous times together. All of them had done this yearly their entire life. But Jesus took one of the cups of wine that they were sharing, and he got ready to pass it around. Now you might like to know, in a Passover meal, which again is recalling the Israelite liberation from slavery in Egypt, there were actually several cups of wine that they would pass around during the course of this meal, not just one cup. Each of them represented something different, reminded them of something different. This was the third cup, called the cup of redemption. As he passed around this cup of redemption to them, he said these words, "This is my blood of the covenant, which is poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." This Messiah, Jesus, knew exactly what he was talking about. He knew the prophetic words of Zechariah, and he knew that they were being fulfilled through him. And whether the disciples caught that reference in the moment, or they were kind of slow on the uptake, right? Like sometimes the scriptures tell us that later, after he rose again, then they understood, right? At some point, they caught it. When Zechariah could say, "Because of the blood of my covenant with you," and then Jesus could say, "This is my blood of the covenant with you." This morning, church, as we come to the table, let us hear these words with fresh ears. Let us see our nation with fresh eyes. And let us commit to Jesus with fresh loyalty. Let us come to the table with gratitude that his shed blood comes with the promise of hope and peace, of ending all other bloodshed.